There's a particular kind of loneliness no one prepares you for, the loneliness of not being desired, not simply being single or alone or between relationships, but living in a body that no one reaches for, living behind a face that never gets chosen, being the one people see through, not the one they look at. It's the kind of absence that doesn't always hurt loudly, but it stays. It settles deep in the chest, in the muscles, in the mirror. Maybe no one's ever said it outright. Maybe you've had friends. Maybe people liked your mind, your humor, your kindness, but something's always missing. You've never been wanted with hunger. You've never felt what it's like for someone to look at you with a kind of raw, unfiltered ache. You've never been someone's fantasy. You've been accepted, tolerated, even admired, but not craved. And that does something to you over time. You start to wonder if there's something wrong with you, not just with your appearance, but with your presence. You start to move through the world quietly, trying not to expect too much, because it's safer that way, because hope, when left unanswered, begins to rot into shame. And so you try to convince yourself you don't need to be desired, that you're above it, that you're fine on your own, but it never fully works, because underneath the self-talk and resilience is a very old ache, the need to be seen and wanted, not just loved, but longed for. Psychologist Donald Winnicott once said that it is in the face of the mother that the child first sees itself. The reflection of being wanted is where we learn who we are, and if that reflection never comes, if we grow up or grow older without ever seeing ourselves as desirable through the eyes of another, it fractures something inside us. We begin to feel like ghosts in our own lives, present but untouched. People like to talk about the pain of heartbreak, the rupture of once having love and losing it, but rarely do we talk about the pain of never having it at all, of not knowing what it feels like to be chosen, to be pursued, to be looked at as if you matter beyond your usefulness. It's a quieter grief, but no less real, and often it's carried in silence, because to say it out loud, "No one has ever wanted me," feels humiliating, not because it should, but because we live in a culture that equates desirability with value. And so you internalize the rejection. You assume the problem is you. You diet. You change your clothes. You try to seem more confident. You tell yourself that maybe if you were smarter, funnier, more mysterious, then someone might finally want you. And when they don't, you stop asking. You stop trying. You make yourself smaller, quieter, safer, until eventually, you forget what it even felt like to want anything deeply. But desire doesn't disappear. It just gets redirected into fantasies, into crushes that never go anywhere, into unspoken obsessions with people who seem to live on a different planet. People who glide through life being touched, wanted, loved, while you sit in the quiet, wondering what it is they have that you don't, wondering if you're invisible, if you've always been. And what makes it harder is that no one validates this grief. There are no rituals for it, no breakup songs, no friend group check-ins. If you talk about it, people try to reassure you. They say things like, "You'll find someone," or "You just have to be more confident." But what if it's not about finding someone right now? What if it's about facing the years, maybe decades, of never having been seen that way at all? This is where the pain begins to shift from rejection into existential doubt. You stop just questioning whether someone will love you, and start questioning whether you are even lovable, whether you are inherently lacking in some secret, unspoken quality that others seem to have. And when that thought takes root, it doesn't just affect your love life. It shapes your identity. It makes you distrust admiration. It makes you flinch when someone compliments you, because it doesn't match your internal reality. It makes you scared to be touched, not because you don't want it, but because you don't know how to receive something that's always been denied to you. And yet, even in that darkness, there is something sacred in your longing. The philosopher Simone de Beauvoir wrote that, "To will oneself moral and to will oneself free are one and the same decision." And perhaps, in the quiet decision to keep longing, even when the world offers you nothing back, there is a kind of freedom, a kind of moral clarity. You still believe in the possibility of connection. You still believe that being wanted is not shallow or selfish, but human, that it matters, and it does. There's a weight that comes with being unwanted, not just in the moment, but over years. It becomes a part of how you move, how you speak, how you shrink yourself in photos, how you sit in a room full of people and instinctively assume that no one's looking at you, that if someone does, it's by accident, or pity, or politeness. And even if you build a life around that silence, a life full of friendships, careers, achievements, the grief remains. It's not that you're incapable of love, it's that you've never known what it feels like to be desired. And those are not the same thing. Love can be kind, it can be warm, but desire is different. Desire is raw, it's irrational. It says, I want you, not just because you're good, but because something in me pulls toward you. And when you've lived without that for a long time, it starts to feel like a missing limb. You walk around looking whole, but part of you is always aching, and the world doesn't make it easy. We live in a culture that worships desirability and punishes those who fall outside of it. The beautiful are idolized, the desirable are given attention, opportunities, love, and everyone else is told to work harder, try again, lose weight, gain confidence, stay positive. You're told that love is for everyone, but desire? Desire is earned. So you try to earn it. You become smarter, nicer, more interesting. You soften yourself so you don't seem too much. You toughen up so you don't seem too fragile. You try to find the right angle, in your photos, in your personality, in your presence. But no matter what you do, you remain unseen in the way that matters to you most. And that invisibility starts to wrap itself around your worth. You wonder if maybe you just weren't meant for that kind of connection. If maybe there's a category of people the world just overlooks, not because they're unlovable, but because they're not wanted. And that distinction starts to gnaw at you, because wanting carries a different kind of validation. When someone wants you, in a room full of other people, it creates a rupture in the silence. It makes you feel chosen. And when you've never been chosen, you don't just feel lonely, you feel unreal. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have." And that's what this grief often feels like. Mourning not just what didn't happen, but what may never happen. Mourning the fantasy of being someone's first choice. Mourning the future version of yourself where someone touches your face like it's sacred, where someone pulls you closer, not because they should, but because they can't help it. You wonder if that version of you even exists, and over time, it becomes harder and harder to believe in them. But the deeper wound isn't just the lack of desire, it's what that lack has taught you about yourself. It's the way you've internalized silence as proof, the way you flinch from mirrors, the way you tense when someone offers affection, unsure whether it's real or fleeting. It's the way you preempt rejection by never letting yourself hope too much, or at all. And yet, you still ache. You still long, which means something inside you hasn't died. And that matters, because desire, at its core, isn't just about bodies or attraction. It's about recognition. It's about being mirrored back to yourself through another's longing eyes. It's about feeling real in someone's presence. And you deserve that, not because you've earned it, not because you've perfected yourself into being worthy, but because you're human. And humans were not built to exist in emotional isolation. We are wired for reflection, for contact, for heat. The mistake is thinking that your worth is tied to whether or not someone has wanted you yet. It isn't. Your worth isn't retroactive. It doesn't arrive once someone loves you. It doesn't begin the moment someone finally says, "I want you." It was always there, buried beneath the silence, beneath the years, beneath the longing. The grief is real. It deserves to be named, but it's not the end of your story, because desire, like love, is not a finite resource. You are not invisible, because no one has claimed you yet. You are not unwanted, because the world hasn't reflected you back with hunger. It just means your mirror hasn't arrived. Not yet. Maybe the worst part isn't the loneliness, it's the questioning. You begin to question whether you've ever really been seen, not in the way people see your effort, your intellect, your kindness, but in the way someone sees you and wants you, not for what you do, not for how well you love, but simply for existing, for being there, in your skin, in your silence, in the exact shape of who you are. When you've gone years without that, your mind starts rewriting the narrative. Maybe you weren't meant to be desired. Maybe your role is to witness love, not to experience it, to support others, but never be the one held. You try to stay grateful. You remind yourself of all the good things you do have, but still, a quiet shame lingers, a dull ache that says, maybe I'm just not the kind of person people ache for. And that's a different kind of heartbreak, one with no clear beginning and no clear end. We don't talk enough about the psychological weight of being overlooked, of being the friend, the backup, the safe option, of being praised for being emotionally mature, while others are pursued for being beautiful, magnetic, alive. It's not jealousy, it's grief, a grief rooted in the belief that you too could be radiant if only someone saw you that way. Psychoanalyst Heinz Kohut believed that one of the core needs of the self is what he called mirroring. We need to feel admired, seen, delighted in. When that doesn't happen, especially over a long period of time, we don't just feel undesired, we begin to feel unreal, like our personhood hasn't been reflected back to us with warmth. And when no one ever touches you with longing, when no one ever lights up around you, that absence becomes internalized. You don't just feel alone, you begin to feel defective. But you are not defective. You are not broken. What you are is tired. Tired of living in a culture that confuses desirability with hierarchy, that hands out validation unevenly, rewarding bodies that conform, faces that fit trends, personalities that are easy to consume. You are tired of trying to earn affection through performance, of playing the role of the strong one, the wise one, the one who understands, always understanding, always holding space, while never being the one someone leans into with awe. And what you deserve, what you've always deserved, is not to be pitied, not to be reassured that it'll happen someday. You deserve to be wanted now, as you are, without edits, without becoming more, without having to prove that your softness, your depth, your hunger for closeness are worthy of desire. You are worthy because of those things. You are worthy in the quiet ache of longing, in the honesty of admitting how much it hurts, in the resilience of continuing to hope, even when that hope has been bruised. That's not weakness, that's strength. And here's the truth that's hardest to accept. Some people live for decades before ever being touched with reverence. Some go unnoticed, not because they are unworthy, but because we live in a world that often fails to notice what's real. But realness doesn't vanish just because it's been ignored. It waits. It survives. The philosopher Alain de Botton wrote that our sense of being lovable is powerfully shaped by how we were loved in the past, but he also reminds us that new kinds of love can rewrite old stories, slowly but surely, not all at once, not like in the movies, but in real, imperfect, tender ways. So maybe the work now is not to force yourself to feel desirable. Maybe the work is to grieve, to allow the grief that's lived in your skin for years to finally speak, to admit that being unseen has hurt you, that it's shaped you, and to hold that truth with compassion instead of shame. Because the pain of never being desired isn't about vanity. It's about the human need to feel wanted in a way that makes your existence feel undeniable, to be someone's yes in a world that's offered you mostly silence. And the fact that you still want that, after everything, is not sad. It's beautiful. It means your heart is still open. It means you haven't numbed yourself into apathy. It means you still believe that love is possible, not just in theory, but in your own life. And maybe, just maybe, the first hand that reaches for you will not come to complete you, but to remind you, you were never invisible. You were just waiting to be seen by eyes that had finally learned how to look.